Hi, Verbling. My name's Michaela. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. And today we're talking about present and past perfect. If you guys want to friend me on Facebook, you can check out my Facebook name in the chat box and friend me there. Andre, welcome to class.
Hi, how are you?
Good,
It's
how
been
are
a while.
you? Yeah, it feels like it's been a really long time. What have you been up to?
Nothing special. Your class is just not, just haven't not been a time when I've been able.
Yeah, I understand. This is kind of a busy time of year for me too. Are you getting busier towards the December holiday season?
Not really as usual. I go to work, then I come back, then I go to work,
Mm,
everything like that.
Recently, I came back to California in the US for the holidays and stuff, so my classes have also shifted hours a little bit because now I'm 6 hours behind what my old schedule was. So things have changed a little for me too.
So do you study somewhere?
No, I was living and working in Brazil, but now I'm coming back just to see my family and spend Thanksgiving, which is on Thursday, and then Christmas as well. So I'll be back in the US for at least a couple of months now.
Okay,
Yeah,
I see.
yeah.
So do you speak Portuguese?
Yeah, I speak Portuguese, not error-free Portuguese. It's sometimes a little difficult, but I speak enough Portuguese to have friends and go to the store and do all those kinds of things. So I really enjoy it in Brazil. It's a nice place.
Okay, where were you there? In which
I
city?
was living in Minas Gerais, and a city that's really small. It's called, well, kind of small, anyways. It's called Chimoto, but it's about 4 hours north by bus from Belo Horizonte, which is the capital of Minas Gerais.
Okay,
Have
I
you been
see.
to Brazil?
No, because it is quite far. It is
Yeah.
about 12 hours to fly there, so yeah, it is
Yeah,
quite far.
very far from you, but I recommend it. It's a beautiful place.
Okay, thank you for recommendation.
Let's check out who else is in class. Imad, welcome to class.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Imad. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
Good. Is this the first time I've had you in class?
Yeah, it is the first time. Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Where are you from?
I'm calling from Montreal, but I'm from Morocco.
Wow, very cool. So what are you doing in Montreal?
I'm living here.
Cool.
Yeah, I work here, yeah.
What inspired the change from Morocco to Montreal?
Well, I came here to study at first, so I stayed after.
Cool. Very cool. All right. And Sneegda, I had you in class a couple times. I remember your very unique and beautiful name. Welcome
Thank
to
you.
class. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm doing good. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. And Anatoly, welcome to class.
Hello, thank you.
How are you, Anatoly? It's been quite a while. What have you been up to?
I'm fine, thank you. I think we are joining to Verblen in different uh, time. Maybe
Probably.
it is the reason.
So you've been continuing your studies and everything normally, but we've just been missing each other.
Yes,
All right. Well, good to see you again.
thank you.
And Adrian, welcome to class.
Hello, teacher.
Hi, Adrian. How are you?
Thanks, Brian. And you?
I'm doing really well. Is there anything special going on in your life right now?
Now? Because?
Same old, same old.
Ah, okay.
All right. So let's get started. I'll screen share the notes. I tried to attach the notes to class and it did not work really well. It just doesn't look like it's attaching to me, so hopefully you guys can follow along with me. And if you guys need these notes for yourself, I'll try to send them to you individually or maybe work on getting them attached to class again. And Jose, welcome to class.
Okay. Thank you, teacher.
Good to see you, Jose.
Nice to see you.
All right, so let's talk about the present and past perfect. There's some of the most complex and difficult tenses in English. People make a lot of mistakes with them. So we're going to talk and work with these tenses today. First, we're going to talk about the present perfect. So can I hear a couple suggestions from students? When do we use the present perfect? When is it appropriate? Does anyone know?
When we have experience, I have been here for.
Excellent. Yes.
When we talk about an event which is connected with the present.
Like what? For instance, what?
For instance,
When
I've been happy with your classes.
Yeah. Yes. Excellent.
when we have a connection between the past and the present, no?
Yeah. Give me an example.
For example, I have seen the TV this afternoon.
Okay. All right. I have been watching, maybe. I have been watching TV this afternoon. That's a good one. All right. So those are all great suggestions, and we have a couple graphs here to represent some of those situations you guys are talking about. The first one is like the first suggestion, when you have an experience, maybe something happened in the past, and you keep that experience with you, so we talk about it in the present perfect because it has this tie to the present. So like our example before, I have been to Colombia. It doesn't tell us how many times you've been to Colombia. Maybe you've been to Colombia 4 times, or maybe you've only been once. But it tells me that you have this experience. It's like, you know, in your backpack of all the things you've experienced in your life, so it has this tie to the future. And that's what the first graph represents. The second graph here represents something that happened and continues up until now. So that would be kind of like watching TV this afternoon. I have been watching TV this afternoon, meaning that you started it in the past and it's continuing until the present. You're still watching TV. And the last one is something that I didn't hear anyone mention, but it's similar to what you guys were talking about. It's when we have something that happens on and off, maybe like lessons in English, or I could say something like, every time I pass the store, I eat chocolate. And that would be a habit of mine, so I could use the present perfect to talk about that. Like, I have been eating chocolate every time I pass the store, and that doesn't mean that I'm eating chocolate right now, but it's a habit that I still have, and maybe I'll eat chocolate tomorrow, maybe I'll eat chocolate a week from now, but it's a habit that's on and off for a period of time. All right, any questions on these graphs or when we use the present perfect? Great. So the biggest mistake probably I hear with present perfect is when students don't use the present perfect. A lot of times students are a little bit afraid to use it because they're not exactly confident in their ability, so people use the simple past instead of the present perfect. So hopefully today we'll be able to work on that. And the next section just gives us some clues as to when we might use the present perfect with other words. So these are words that kind of let you know now is a good time to use present perfect. And I'm going to ask, how about Snigdha? Can you read the section for us?
Yeah, sure. Time expressions with the present perfect. Since with a specific year or a period in the past. Since 2002 or since I was a child. For with a number of years, for 20 years. Ever and yet. In questions and negatives, have you ever, or hasn't been yet. Already and never, just between have or has and the verb. Has already finished, have just been. Before, since, for, already, many times, so far, yet, at the end of a sentence or questions. Have you been there before? When do we use the past perfect?
Thanks. Awesome. So those are words we use with the present perfect and the times we need to use the present perfect. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the past perfect. Do I have any questions before we go on to past perfect a little bit? Awesome. Then let's get some more suggestions from you guys on when we might use the past perfect. Any ideas?
When you want to emphasize that event happened before another event.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. That's an important one.
If we completed any task and its result continues in the present yet, then we can use past perfect.
Yeah, so that is something that we can do as well, as long as we're comparing it to another event. As long as we have two different times that we're talking about. And Diego, welcome to class. Sorry I missed you there. How are you?
Thanks. I'm sorry to be late.
No problem. All right. So we have a couple more graphs here to help represent the times when we use the past perfect. And as you can see, all of them show multiple events. So we only use the past perfect when you're comparing two different times, meaning that the most common time you'll see past perfect used is when someone is telling a story or maybe history, because you're going to be comparing one event and another event. So the first graph represents something that happened in an unspecified period of time before another event. For example, maybe something like, I hadn't been to Australia before I went to Germany. So saying that, or you could make it in the present as well, or the positive. So I had been to Australia before I went to Germany, meaning that you're comparing something that happened in the past before another event, but we didn't give specific times. You can give specific times with the past perfect, but I didn't give them in that example. So that's why we have this unspecified for another event. The next graph shows something that started and had a duration of a period of time before another event. So I had been planning to go to Australia before my car crash, meaning that there was a period of time when that was happening before something else happened. And then the last one is just two simple events that I want to show the difference in time. So maybe I had gone to the store before I cooked dinner. One event and then another event. And again, you can use specific times with the past perfect, but you can't do that with the present perfect. So that's the main difference between past and present perfect, is that with past perfect, I can say at 12 o'clock, I had gone to the store before I cooked dinner in the evening. You can use specific times. All right, we have another section for vocabulary. Any questions before we read this one? Awesome. Then how about Jose? Can you read the highlighted section that has that vocabulary in it?
The time expressions are ready for signs and yet may be used in the past perfect simple, as they are in the present perfect simple. Remember the following rules for using other time expressions. After, as soon as, the moment that, until, before, using the past perfect simple. Example: after she had moved out, I found her notes. I didn't say anything until she had finished talking. Before, when, by the time, before the past simple. Example: before I knew it, She had run out the door. By the time he found her, she had found someone new.
Thanks. Okay, and we have a note down here, similar to what I was mentioning before. And for this section, let's have Imad read.
Note, unlike with the present perfect, it is possible to use specific time, words, or phrases with the past perfect. Although this is possible, it is usually not necessary. If the past perfect action did occur at a specific time, the simple past can be used instead of the past perfect when before or after is used in the sentence. The words before and after actually tell you what happens first, so the past perfect is optional. For this reason, both sentences below are correct. Example, she had visited her Japanese relatives once in 1993 before she moved in with them in 1996. Or, she visited her Japanese relatives once in 1993 before she moved in with them in 1996.
Thanks. All right. Any questions? Wonderful. So let's try an example of that. Exactly the same thing as is in the example. I want you guys to write two sentences, one that uses the past perfect and the other that does not. So you have to find a situation where they're roughly equivalent and create both. So one example with past perfect and one example without. When you guys are ready with those sentences, put them in the chat box. And if you have any questions while you're writing, go ahead and ask me verbally, or you can put your questions in the chat box as well. All right, we have one ready. We had eaten at the restaurant before we went to the movie theater. Excellent. Great example, Imad. And how would that be if you said it without the past perfect, Imad?
We ate at the restaurant before we went to the movie theater.
Yep, exactly. Great. The next one I see is from Anatoly. I had finished school before I studied in university. I finished school and studied in university. All right. Interesting. So both of those are possible. The second one is less specific. It doesn't actually tell us which happened first, but of course logic could tell us that he finished school and then started university, because that's usually the order things go in.
Mm-hmm. And should I use articles here in these sentences?
No, that's okay. Definitely not for school. We usually would not use an article for that because it's just talking generally. And you would only use an article for university if if it's a specific university. Like if I already know that you went to the University of California, then you might say the university. But if you're just talking about your experience and you haven't specified where you went, then you don't need an article there.
Okay, thank you.
All right. The next one. I had visited my in-laws home 5 years before I got married. Excellent. And the other sentence, I met my in-laws home 5 years before I got married. Okay, both are pretty good sentences. The first one is perfect, and it uses the past perfect. And the second one is good. It uses simple past for both. The only thing that's a little bit strange is we usually do not use the verb meet for things. Meet is usually something we use for people. So you could use the same verb that you used in your first sentence. I visited my in-laws' home 5 years before I got married.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Nigda. Next up, I had been interested in learning Spanish before I came to Spain. Excellent. And Andre, how would that be if you weren't going to use the past perfect?
Pardon? Sorry, what did you ask?
So your sentence, you beautifully use the past perfect, but how would it be if you weren't going to use the past perfect? So all you have to do is change that first tense to simple past.
Okay, so I was interested in learning Spanish before I came to Spain.
Exactly. Excellent. So both are correct and possible, and it's totally up to you which you use. Thanks, Andre.
Thank you.
After I went to Brazil, I had been Europe. Okay. So first up, we're missing a preposition here. Obviously, we need it to before Europe. So after I went to Brazil, I had been to Europe. This one is a little bit strange because you're using the after to say that Brazil didn't come first, but then you're using the past perfect. So it's kind of a little confused because you're trying to say that both of them came before the other one. If you change the word after to before, it makes more sense. Before I went to Brazil, I had been to Europe. That means that Europe happened before Brazil. But with the word after, you're saying that they both happened. I don't know. It's kind of confused. Does that make sense, Adrian?
Okay, yeah.
All right. And if we were going to change that sentence, Adrian, to simple past for both, then how would it sound?
Simple past. After I went to Brazil, I was in Europe.
Okay, great. Thanks,
Yeah.
Adrian. Next up, I had drove to my job before I went to the parking. Okay, good sentence. There's one small error with the word drove. Drove is the simple past form of the verb drive. But what's the particle or the participle? Diego, do you know the participle?
This is driven.
Driven. Yeah, exactly.
Driven,
So
yeah.
I had driven
Yes.
to my job before I went to the parking.
Yes.
Okay, good sentence. And how would that sound if you put it in the simple past for both?
In the simple past, I was driving. Oh, I was driving to my job.
Okay, so you changed it a little bit more because you said I was driving, but that works because that is in past tense, past continuous. So that works. Thanks, Diego.
Okay, thanks.
All right, and the last one I see, I had arrived to my house before my wife finished work. Great, we don't need the preposition there, to. We can leave that out. So I had arrived to my house before my wife finished work.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Use
works.
it.
And
Okay.
how would it sound if it were simple past for both?
I arrived to my house before my wife finished work.
Awesome.
Finished work. Okay.
Great. Okay, let's go on a little bit in our notes then. We're going to talk a little bit about adverb placement when you use the present and past perfect. And we have a big long list of adverbs here. So we're going to be using some of these in examples. And let's have Diego read the list of adverbs.
Okay. Is always, constantly, style, just, only, ever, frequently, generally, infrequently, never, normally, occasionally, often, rarely, regularly, seldom, sometimes, regularly, again, usually.
Awesome. And we have a couple examples about the placement for them. You had previously studied English before you moved to New York, or had you previously studied English before you moved to New York? So that's an example of a positive statement and a question. And in both cases, it comes after the verb have or had and before the participle verb. Okay, so we're going to get some practice with all of this, and we're going to do a little fill in the blank because that's always helpful. We're going to tell a couple stories here and conjugate the verbs in the blank. Now, these blanks can be filled by any tense in the past. So some of them will be the simple past, some of them will be the past perfect, and some of them will be the present perfect. And you even have to think about which might be continuous and which might not. So it's a very complex exercise, but we're going to talk all about it and give our best guesses for each one and then explain exactly why what one is better than the other. So let's get started. I'm going to highlight a section here and ask Andre to start for us. Will you read the highlighted section?
Okay. I'm sorry I left without you last night, but I told you to meet me early because the snow started at 8. I tried to get tickets for that play for months, and I didn't want to miss it.
All right, so you used the simple past, right?
Yes, maybe it should be I had tried to get tickets.
Yeah, had tried, I think, works really well. The past perfect here works a little better because it's a period of time we're talking about, not just one event, but for months. That's our tip. We've got that time expression to help us. Thanks, Andre. Question?
Yeah,
Yes.
can you use I had been trying?
Yes, that's also another option here. And I think that one works really well also because it's a process, it was happening, and it's kind of a dynamic thing versus stative. So if you guys remember, have gone over, there are certain verbs that sound a little more like action verbs that we use in the ing more frequently than a stative verb where we don't usually use it. But this one is kind of this process. So ing would be a really great tense to use here as well. Any other questions? Great. Then let's do another one. I'm going to highlight another section. This one has 2 blanks. And Anatoly, will you read that for us? And then try to fill in the blanks, but you can take your time, no rush.
Okay. By the time I finally left the coffee shop where we were supposed to meet, I blank 5 cups of coffee and I blank over an hour. I I think we can use both of variants. I had 5 cups of coffee and waited over an hour. And also I think we can use I had 5 cups of coffee and waited over an hour.
Yeah. So these ones work really well in the past perfect, the simple past perfect without being continuous. Thanks, Anatoly.
Okay, thank you.
And the last sentence in this paragraph is going to be for Adrian. Finish up this first part of the story for us.
I have to leave because I to meet Katy in front of the theater. Okay, I had to leave because I had arranged to meet Katy in front of the theater.
Excellent. I think past perfect is really good for that one as well, because all of this is setting up and it's kind of in the same time plane. So in a minute we're going to switch things around, but this is all setting up for another event that happens after these things. So all those are pretty good in the past perfect. Let's read the next paragraph, and I'll highlight the first sentence and ask Snigdha to read it and try to fill in the blank for us. Snigdha, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, because I was muted.
Go ahead.
When I arrived at the theater, Kathy picked blank up the tickets and she was waiting for us near the entrance. Kathy had already picked up.
Yes, awesome. Had already picked up. Again in the past perfect. Thank you very much, Snigdha. And the next sentence is for Jose.
She was really angry because she waited for more than half an hour, or she had waited. She waited. It's better, no?
Well, both are possibilities, but
Both
because
are possible or no?
both are possibilities, but because we already used the past perfect for the events that happened on the same time, past perfect is a bit better.
She had waited.
Yeah,
Okay.
that one works really well. Thank you very much. And the next one with 2 blanks, Imad, read that one for us.
Okay, she said she had almost given up and had gone into the theater without us.
Excellent. Both of them are in the past perfect. Thanks, Imad.
Welcome.
All right, last paragraph in our story, and the first sentence is for Diego. Go ahead and read this one for us.
Katie told me I don't know, you had been late? I don't know.
We have a couple possibilities here, but go ahead and read the whole sentence and then try to decide what you think should go in the blank. That way you have all the context clues.
Okay, late several times in the past and the child will not make plans with you again in the future. Told me I think Katie told me you were late. You were late several times in the past and that she will not make plans with you again in the future.
Okay, so I like what you did because you changed things, and this paragraph is going to change because so far we've been using a lot of past perfect because we're telling this story where several things happened before the last final event. But in this last paragraph, I think the best tense is actually present perfect. Can anyone kind of explain why we might use present perfect here?
No, I don't.
Does anyone else know why we might use present perfect here?
Maybe because she will be late in the future too, not only in the past.
Yes, exactly. So this one is kind of like in the very beginning of class when we talked about this third graph where something happens a couple times and then maybe it'll continue happening in the future. It's a habit or something that happens regularly maybe, on and off, this on and off type of thing. And that's exactly the situation that we have in this last paragraph. The person has been late before and they will probably be late again, or it's a current habit of theirs. That's why the present perfect fits very well. So how can we fill in that blank then? If it's going to be the present perfect, what would it sound like? Let's see. Was that Diego? Would you like to give that a shot? Was that who I was on?
Maybe it's had been late. You had been late.
So say it again. How do you spell that?
In the paragraph that Kelly told me you had been late several times.
Are you spelling it with a have or had been late?
Had been late.
Past perfect?
Yes.
Not exactly. This one is present perfect. For the same reason that I just showed you guys this graph, this is talking about the present perfect because it's something that happens in the past and continues until now and may even happen in the future. We don't know yet.
Okay, thanks.
So how would we put it in the present perfect?
Had been late.
Have been late, but I think it is kind of reported speech, isn't it?
Yeah, also it's reported speech. So how would that change things, Andre? Can you tell us?
If it is if it is the reported speech, the tense should be reduced. So, Cassie told you had been late.
So you think it's the past perfect?
I can't understand why we can use present perfect here.
So
Because
this,
Cassie told it is about past. She told, so it is definitely past. Me, you. So this, you've been late several times. It is related to the present. Only because of this, we can use the present perfect.
Yeah, we see that it's happened in the past and it's something that might continue into the future. So for me, I mean, there's definitely some opinion here and maybe a different person would phrase it in another way. But I would say I would use the present perfect here. And I still haven't heard anyone correctly use the present perfect. Oh, actually, no, that's not true. Yeah, she has been late. I saw it in the chat box and someone else said it, I think. So you have been late several times. That's how I would put it. But I think that past perfect is also an option and reported speech might be the reason for that. So you could put it in the past perfect or in the present perfect. Does anyone have a question on why either of those would be possible?
I understood.
Okay, great. And reported speech is kind of a funny thing because sometimes people use it frequently, but it's actually something that a lot of native speakers tend to ignore or not use consistently, which is why there's a little bit of opinion here, because it's something that sometimes is used, but sometimes people throw it out the window and doesn't really get used. And welcome to class, new student whose name I can't see. It's a ship. Edgardo?
Hello.
Hi, Edgardo. Welcome to class and nice to meet you. Where are you from?
I'm from Chile.
Great. Well, it's good to have you with us. And
Thank you. I'm sorry for being late.
no problem. Let's do a little bit of review. I plan to do a little bit of review now as well. So before we start in on our next story down here, we're going to make one more sentence together, and I'm going to give you each a different situation. So in the beginning of class, we talked about all these graphs, and now I'm going to ask you guys to come up with some example sentences for one of these graphs. So I'm going to give each person maybe a different one. But let's assign these. So the first graph, talking about an experience, that one will be for Anatoly. The second graph, what? Oh, yeah, you can
right now or
in the chat box.
in the chat, okay.
Yep. The second graph, talking about something that started in the past and continues up until now, is for Adrian. The third graph, talking about something that happens on and off in the past and maybe continuing to the future, is for Andre. And then I'm going to assign some past perfect sentences as well. So moving down to the past perfect section. The first one is for Diego. So you're going to talk about something that happened at an unspecified time before another event. Edgardo, you're going to talk about, in the past perfect, about something that started in the past and continued for a period of time before another event. The second graph there. Imad, you get the third graph for past perfect, meaning something that happened at a specific time before another event at a specific time. Jose, we're going to come back up to present perfect, and I'm going to ask you to do an example of the third graph, something that happens on and off and might continue into the future, some kind of habit or lessons or something like that. And Snigdha, how about the second graph, something that started in the past and is continuing up until now? Okay. And while you guys are writing, I'm going to read whatever comes into the chat box. I've been in the USA once. Okay, good sentence. I would change that preposition though. The preposition is not the most common to use. I would say to. I've been to the USA once.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it's wonderful. Thanks, Anatoly.
Okay, thank you.
Next one I see. I come from Vietnam. Ooh. Oh, all right. Well, that's just a comment. Hi, Samson. Nice to meet you. Next up, I have always been fond of English. Excellent sentence. And Andre, was that supposed to be graph number 3? Or graph number 2?
I think I'm not sure.
So it's an excellent sentence, and I think it works perfectly for graph number 2, something that started in the past and continues up until now. Thanks, Andre.
But I should have made for the third graph.
I think so, yeah. If you want to try another sentence, you're welcome to.
Okay.
And next one I see, I've been in New York for the last 2 years. Awesome. Excellent example sentence for the second graph, present perfect, something that started in the past and continues up until now. Thanks, Snigdha.
I have a question about third graph. Actually, I don't clearly understand.
All right, so which one do you have a question on?
On the third graph.
Okay. So you see how this little line here has like a dash and another dash?
Yeah, it is like event breaks and then it continues.
Yeah. So I might say I have taken English lessons every Tuesday for 4 years. Because that means that there are breaks between. I'm not constantly doing English, but it's something that happens on a regular schedule, or you might say, I have been eating a cake on holidays since I was 5. So that might mean that sometimes you do it, and sometimes there are big spaces where you don't do this thing.
Okay, gotcha.
All right. Glad we went over that because, yeah, that one's kind of tricky. It's a little bit more complex. Let's see what else we have in the chat box. He has recently gone to Jamaica. Awesome. And that one looks like the first graph? Yeah, definitely the first graph. So something that happened at an unspecified time in the past.
Maybe he has the second kind.
So that one would work for the second as well, as long as he's still in Jamaica. So this is kind of a funny one, because it could work for the first one because we don't know when it happened. But if the person is still in Jamaica, then it might also work for the second graph. Like he has recently gone to Jamaica, and he plans to return in a week or something. So that would be good for the second graph, as long as it's still something that's happening now.
Okay.
Thanks. Next up, the player had scored a goal right before the match ended. Lovely, lovely sentence. And that one sounds kind of like the third graph for the past perfect.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Thanks. Next up, I have gone abroad every summer for 5 years. Yes, wonderful sentence. That's a perfect example for graph number 3 of the present perfect. All right. And I think I only saw one sentence in the past perfect, but I assigned 3 sentences in the past perfect. So I think we're still waiting on a couple. Does anyone have questions while they're writing? Okay, you guys can continue to write and put your sentences in the chat box whenever they're ready. And in the meantime, everyone who's already done, let's move on to the examples here, the fill in the blank. We've got one more fill in the blank story before we move on to maybe a little conversation before we finish up today. Question?
Yeah, I have a question. Is it a good idea to use the present perfect in storytelling, like when telling a story that happened in the past?
Well, it sort of depends. It is a good idea in certain circumstances, and like we saw in the last story we went over that had 3 paragraphs, we started using the past perfect a lot because we're talking about something that happened in the past before now, right? And then in the end, we changed to the present perfect because we're talking about something that continues up until now. So if maybe you're telling a story about something that changed your life forever, and in that way, it's something that continues up until now. So it is a good idea, but usually it would come at the end of a story, not in the beginning of a story.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, those are good questions. Okay. So one more paragraph. I'm going to highlight a short section that has 1 blank and ask, how about Adrian, can you start for us?
Yeah, my English is really getting better. I try to learn the language since 1985, but only recently have been able to make some real progress. And I think here, okay. Here is to present perfect, I think. I have tried to learn to language since 1985.
That's one possibility. So you could say, I have tried to learn English since 1985, but only recently have I been able to make some real progress. I think another option here would be to put it in the progressive, in the ing form. So I have been trying to learn the language since
Yeah,
1985.
yes. I have been trying to learn it's better.
Awesome. hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little better. It shows that it's a process, like we saw in the last one. Thank you very much, Adrian. And before we go on to the next sentence, I've got one more in the chat box we can talk about. I have done exercise every week since I was 10 years old. Excellent. And that sounds like present perfect from the third graph, something that happens on occasion but not always. Thanks, Jose.
Okay.
All right, the next sentence is for Anatoly, and I will highlight your section here.
By the time I started high school in 1988, I learned the language for almost 3 years. However, I was only able to introduce myself and utter a few memorized sentences. I had been studying language.
Awesome. Yes, had been studying, I think, is perfect. And our clue is the beginning of the sentence, by the time, and then we have a simple past. So it gives us a good comparison. You know that the studying happened before. Okay. Thank you very much. And let's go on. I'll highlight the rest of this paragraph and ask Andre to read for us.
For a couple more years, through grammar and vocabulary lessons, which made absolutely no difference. Nothing worked, so I decided to study abroad. For a couple more years, I had been struggling through.
Yeah, did you put that in the past or the present perfect? Had been struggling through?
Had been.
All right, good. Had been struggling through grammar and vocabulary. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the next section is for Diego.
Okay, I found an exchange program in England that sounded like the perfect answer. I belonged with a host family for 1 month. It was a huge disappointment. I have been staying with a host family for 1 month.
Okay, that's a possibility. Had been staying with the host family for 1 month. But there's kind of a strange thing here, and that is that there's no comparison. So when we use the past perfect, there usually has to be a comparison between something that happened and then later something else happened. So you have this one happened before the other. But since we don't have a comparison, another option here is just the simple past. I stayed with the host family for 1 month.
Okay,
Thank you very much. And rest of this paragraph is for Edgardo.
I blank there the whole time, staring at the host mother and father, hoping that there will be some breakthrough. Nothing. I had been sitting there.
All right. So you kind of came up with a similar answer to the last sentence. But again, I think because there's really no comparison, you're just talking about this one event, the event of you being with a family, and there's no comparison as to where in time it sits. That one might actually work better in just the simple past. And how would it sound if it were the simple past?
I sat there.
Exactly. And we get this set up in the beginning. I found an exchange program. It sounded like the perfect answer. So those first couple simple past tenses set us up for the rest of the paragraph being in simple past as well. Okay. Next up, this sentence is for Imad.
When I returned, I mentioned to a friend that I had problems with the language for years.
Had is an option.
Or I had.
Also an option. So this one's kind of flexible. We could put it in the simple past or the past perfect. Those are the best tenses here. And the rest of this paragraph is for Jose.
Okay. He recommended that I spend a year in an English-speaking country. I decided to go abroad again. I had researched exchange program for a couple of weeks and finally decided on a school in the United States.
Past perfect, had researched.
Okay.
And that one's great because we compare it to the other event.
Compare with other work that is in past. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it's clear from the tenses we use that the research happened before the decision.
Okay.
All right. And the next one, Snigdha, can you read that sentence for us? You're muted, Snigdha. Are you there?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now. Go ahead and read the sentence that's highlighted and try to fill in the blanks with the tense you think is appropriate.
Well, it worked. I blank and blank study in the US for more than 2 years. I have been living and studied in the US for more than 2 years.
So did you put the first blank in the past or the present perfect?
Present perfect?
Excellent. And it's kind of hard to tell from that sentence, but it becomes clear from the second sentence here that it is in the present perfect. And I also like that you put it in the progressive because it is something that is progressing. So I have been living and studying. The second one you put in the past or in the participle form, which doesn't work as well because we need these two to be the same. We've got one and another. So they have to be equal parts on both sides of this conjunction, meaning that if you put one in progressive, you have to put the other in progressive.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And the very last sentence is for Adrian.
The last?
Yep.
I stay here for the physical career before I return home. By then, should we? Okay. I had stayed here for at least another years before I return home.
All
By
right.
then, yeah.
So this one is kind of a trick question because we've been talking, in this story, we used a lot of past perfect, we used some present perfect, we used some simple past, we used a lot of progressive as well. But this sentence is kind of totally out of the blue, a big change. Anatoly, do you have an idea why this sentence is really weird and isn't going to be similar to the other sentences we saw?
I have time. By then I should be completely not sure.
Does anyone else know?
Yeah, it should be in the future. I will stay here.
Yeah, so totally a complete turnaround from what we've been talking about, but it kind of gives us a good rainbow of tenses. So we used a lot of different tenses to show exactly which events the times happened in. And now we're talking about the future. They're saying that another year into the future before I returned home. And by that time in the future, by then, I should be completely fluent. All right, work over.
I will be studying.
Huh? We'll be staying?
We'll be staying here.
Yeah, that would also work. I will be staying here for at least another year is also a really good way to phrase the sentence. I think both are options. All right. Thank you guys so much. You did an excellent job, and unfortunately we have run out of time now, but I've had an awesome time. I have another class coming up. I have an hour break and then one more class, so maybe I will see you guys there. Thanks.
Thank you, teacher.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.